We're broadcasting from the Middle Tennessee Electric Studios.
The Middle Tennessee Electric Studios.
Middle Tennessee Electric, serving to make life better.
Visit mte.com.
This is the WGNS Action Line. Talk Rutherford County News
since 1947.
The WGNS Action Line. Now your host, Scott Walker.
You're tuned to WGNS Murfreesboro, and joining us in studio this morning, we have got Murfreesboro Mayor Shane McFarland. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Scott. How are you?
I'm good. It's kind of starting to feel like what summer could feel like. It was kind of hot yesterday.
It's nice.
It is. I wish we could just maintain 70 degrees year round. As a mayor, do you have the capacity to set that temperature?
You can do that, but I think it's called San Diego.
That's a long commute to work every day.
It'd be a long commute.
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be rough. Anyway, so what's happening right now within the city, and budget-wise, is all of that pretty much wrapped up, ready to go? Or
Yeah, we have our first budget session on Thursday at the airport in the community room. We've been working really hard on that. We've worked, each council member has met individually, some multiple times, to talk about sort of where we are, what's going on. No tax increase. We're able to do all the things that, well, I wouldn't say we're able to do all the things that we want to do, but we're able to do the things that we feel like need to be done. There's lots of wants out there that we'd like to do, but pay increases to continue to pay our employees, but also our public safety professionals. That's been a big deal to work on over the years, to continue to keep them at comparable cities at the top of their field. I mean, really, if you look at our pay, comparable cities outside of Nashville, which it's hard for Murfreesboro to be able to compare to Nashville with the amount of tax increases that Nashville has had. But we feel like we're in good shape and headed in the right direction. We've got a lot of infrastructure improvements that we're continuing to work on. We've really been working with TDOT, lobbying for lots of road improvements that are in our city. We're still pushing really hard to work on Memorial from Thompson Lane out to West Jefferson Pike, to work with the state. We've committed that project a 50% uplift. So instead of TDOT having to pay 90% of the project, we've committed that the city would pay 50% if we can get funding for that project. So there's a lot of good things working inside the city.
I think there's a lot of folks out there, and this is probably normal for every city across the state, but I think there's a lot of folks who don't really understand certain roads are state roads and projects are funded by the state versus, this may be a city road. How do you go about explaining that to citizens when they call in and ask about a construction project or a problem with the road?
It's tough. That's one of the challenges in explaining all the inner workings on road projects. For example, I mean, a road project that the city of Murfreesboro takes on, we can get done pretty quick. For example, the widening of Medical Center Parkway, we've done that over the course of a year, and we're almost finished with that project. That's a city project. That's a city road. And
that one started out in phases, right? I mean, you had different phases that you wanted to reach and goals and all that.
We did the phase from I-24 back to Thompson Lane, and then now we're finishing up Thompson Lane to the fountains. So a city road project that's funded by the city, those are projects that we can do fairly quick. The state projects just take more time. For example, the Cherry Lane interchange that we've worked on, going from Memorial all the way to I-24, across I-24, and going to Blackman Road, that has a significant portion that's a state project because we have an interchange at 840, we have an interchange at I-24. So those projects just take more time. And that's the thing that I would relay to any of our residents. You want us working with TDOT because we are asking for money, and we really have, as a municipality, put our money where our mouth is. And we, instead of funding projects on a 90-10 and 80-20 basis where the state will pay 90%, the municipality will pay 10%, we've in turn gone and said, look, if you'll give us partial funding, we'll pay 50%. We feel so, for example, Old Fort Parkway, the widening of Old Fort Parkway, we're paying close to 50% for that project. And we did that so TDOT will look and say, the city of Murfreesboro is here. The city of Murfreesboro wants those projects completed, and they're willing to pay a significant portion of that. So those are the things that we continue to work on. And, you know, Scott, I've tried over the years of doing this to be transparent and upfront. And I really mean this. If you look at cities, Murfreesboro, so look at Clarksville, for example. Look at Smyrna. There are not many cities that are growing, that have industry, that have jobs, that have shopping opportunities, that have healthcare, that don't have traffic. That's just part of living in a city. And I moved here in 1992. The traffic is definitely greater in 2026 than it was in 1992. That's the tough thing, is somebody who's been here 30 plus years, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, this is what the roads were like. Well, our population in 1992 was 40,000 residents, and now we're, almost quadruple that. And so that's the things that we try to work on. We keep a low tax rate. We've had one tax increase in over 30 years. And that's the thing that I would tell the resident. You really can't have both. You can't have no growth, do all the infrastructure you can do, and have a low tax rate at the same time. You've got to have one or the other. And so we've tried to balance that. And I get the same frustration that the residents do, and very sensitive to that.
And, I guess if you really look at it from a business standpoint, it makes sense that Murfreesboro would offer to pay more towards that state roadway, because if it equals bringing in more business, generating more revenue, more tax dollars, all of that stuff, then obviously that's a positive.
For example, the Gateway area, the majority of the roads that were built in that area were all paid for by the growth and the development in that area. The city did not build, besides Medical Center Parkway, we didn't build any of that out there. But there's a significant portion of our revenue that comes to our school system and to the county school system, and comes to our city because of, for example, Trader Joe's or In-N-Out Burger that's out there. So, I think the part that is tough, and again, I see both sides of the coin, but, if you've got a major road, if you've got, for example, Memorial, that is a 5-lane road, I think it's reasonable to think you're going to have traffic on that road. It was built for a 5-lane road. So I think the thing that we have to be able to do, and what we've tried really hard, is to give people different routes to get through our city, to not have to always use those main roads.
I always find it interesting online. It's funny what people care about versus what people don't really care that much about and they want to argue about instead. You brought up Trader Joe's. I remember, do you remember the days before we had a Trader Joe's? I don't know what life was like back then. It was crazy life.
Look, I've not been to Trader Joe's.
I haven't actually either.
I went there when it first opened, and so there's a lot of people who were driving outside of our city to go to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods. So I'm thankful they're here. And the thing with Trader Joe's, they don't come to communities that are not on the rise. They want to be in those communities where the average median income is rising. So I think there are some positives that come with that. But look, I think it's really tough for someone, for example, who's been here for 34 years, and you see, hey, I used to could drive to Barfield Crescent Ballpark and I could get there in 20 minutes, and now it takes me 40 minutes to get there. And so I understand the frustrations, but, I think typically what you see, and I'm like this in some instances too, someone moves to Murfreesboro. I met a gentleman from California the other day at a group that I spoke to, and he's like, Shane, I moved here 4 years ago, and look, I'm going to be honest, I don't want anybody else to move here. And so I think that's the tough thing that you see online, especially, that you've got people who move here, and then once they're here, they're like, this place is awesome. We don't want anybody else to move here.
Yeah, kind of like, I've arrived. This is enough.
Yeah, this is it.
I'm here, guys.
Yeah. Tempering part of that, and I think the number one thing, if you talk to people in the community, people are concerned with growth. Our growth rate, in my opinion, 10 years ago was not sustainable. The growth rate that we have now, that continues to be in the 1% to 2% range in the city of Murfreesboro, that is a sustainable plan. But there's, we had such an influx post-COVID of people who were moving here, and people, I say this, and I think it's backed up by U-Haul stats, where you see one-way trips of people who are renting U-Hauls, and the amount of people that are moving from the West Coast and areas in the East Coast that are moving to the South.
It's wild.
It is unreal, the amount of people who are moving, for example, from the migration from California, and the people who've moved here to Murfreesboro. So, and look, as much as people are concerned about growth, and this may not be the most political answer. I mean, that's the country we live in, where people can move where they want to move.
Yeah.
And I joke with Mary Esther around at Smyrna that, we're going to build a wall around Murfreesboro and make Smyrna pay for it. That we've got so many people that want to move to not just Murfreesboro, but Tennessee, because there's no income tax. You look at Murfreesboro's property tax rate, it's as low as any comparable city. You look at the services in Murfreesboro between police, fire, parks. It's a good city. I mean, it's a great place to live.
And it really is fascinating looking on social media, watching people talk about how they want, this store or that store at this location or that location. It's always interesting, though, to see how passionate people are about certain brands or companies coming here.
Well, I was reading a thread this morning. I don't get on social media a lot. I'll check it once a day because I'll get tagged for different things that, I want to be responsive to all of our residents. And, if I were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, one of the things that I want and I would hope people would say about me is Mayor McFarland, even if I didn't agree with him, he always responded to me. I tell people this: the minute that I don't respond to people, or I'm not responsive to things where people are asking questions and I need to get out of representing, our residents. But the part that I sometimes do get frustrated with, there's things that we have that are in our control, and there are things that we have that are not in our control. So, for example, the Kroger development that is talking about coming out on Memorial Boulevard, the new Kroger. The Kroger that is there now is, I think, a 50,000 square foot, 60,000 square foot store. They've outgrown it because it's so busy. So they're wanting to build a 90,000 square foot store. And so some of the comments were like, well, look, just tell them they have to go find a vacant business that's
a big vacant business. I mean, to find a 90,000 plus.
But we've tried to do that. Like if you look around our community, you'll see the old roses on Martin Luther King that we were able to work to get a new tenant. O'Reilly's in there. AutoZone is now went into Jackson Heights, which was underperforming. So we try to do that. But ultimately, we can't direct and tell people this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've seen how government does that, and it doesn't work. So I do think that we try to make recommendations to people who are coming to the city. We try to make recommendations and say, look, this would be a great opportunity. But ultimately, we can't tell somebody this is what you're going to do. We just don't have that authority. So the city council deferred the Kroger project last week. And so now we're continuing to work with them to be able to say, hey, these are things that need to be done to look at that project moving forward.
Where is that Kroger looking to relocate, to build? What are they looking to do exactly?
Yeah, so you've got from Haynes Drive going north on Memorial. You've got a lot of vacant land that's there on the west side of Memorial. It backs up to Palmer Heights, an older, great subdivision. If you've never been to that subdivision, it is beautiful.
Are we talking about the side of the road that Sportscom is on, or
the opposite side?
Okay,
so it's the same. If you're going towards Lebanon, it's the same side that the Kroger is on right now. It's just down the street.
Okay.
And so what they're wanting to do, they've outgrown their facility, and so they're wanting to be able to build a new facility, which is great. I mean, I'm excited that they're doing well. But with that comes a lot of discussion about drainage and about parking and all of those things. And so that was a huge discussion at the council of protecting the neighborhood that's behind the Kroger, proving that we can improve the drainage system that's in that area. And I think the process works the way it's supposed to work, which is us showing that, or the developer showing that they can make things better and not worse.
And by the way, our phone number, if you want to text in any questions to the mayor, Mayor Shane McFarland, 615-893-1450. And one of the questions we have here, it says, there's been a major discussion about preserving historic areas while adding modern development. How difficult is that balancing act for city leadership?
It's extremely tough. We do have our downtown area that has the historical zoning overlay on there, which protects things from being demolished. Outside of that, the city does not really have control over what someone does with their property. Someone had tagged me about a piece of property on Maple that is outside of our historic district where someone bought that and they tore it down. The city can't stop someone from, if they buy a piece of property and the property they deem is not sufficient to be able to rebuild, or if they deem it they want to do something else with it, we don't have the opportunity to tell people they can't do that, except in the historical zoning district. The historical zoning district does have the ability to do that, but when you look at expanding that historical district, I mean, I remember this probably 15, 20 years ago when we looked at expanding that on Lytle Street. I mean, people were not happy about that. And so those are things that you try to take into account.
You know, overall, I don't think anybody wants to live in a city or a state where the government is literally telling future business owners, current business owners what to do, how to expand, where to expand. I mean, it starts kind of narrowing in on becoming a communist area. I mean, we don't want that to happen.
It's extremely subjective, and you know, you can't have it both ways. So in my opinion, you can't say, for example, I use this example, people would talk about, you know, Walmart coming and relocating into our community. And, you know, we don't have the ability to say, look, we don't want any more Walmarts.
Yeah.
You know, no, we do have the ability that we're working on limiting vape shops. We've
and there's a lot of them.
Yeah. We've worked on limiting beer and tobacco stores, on how we've done that. Liquor stores you can regulate. But you can regulate that because the state has given us the ability to regulate that. We don't get to regulate, for example, hey, we've got enough mattress stores. We're not letting mattress stores come in.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the thing that you'll hear a lot, we've got enough Mexican restaurants. You know, if you don't like the Mexican restaurant, just don't eat there. And I mean, I hate to say that, but I don't think at my heart you want elected officials determining what business should or should not come inside the city of Murfreesboro. I mean, what you do, and what I've tried to do, is to listen to our residents, and our residents say, for example, hey, we would love to have a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods. Can you guys talk and try to help recruit? For another great example, for years, people were driving to Williamson County to go shop at Costco. And our residents clearly said, we want a Costco. So we worked to try to get a Costco here. Those are opportunities. Now, if you see a development that you know does not fit with the character of your community, then there are opportunities and ways as a city that we can say, for example, use this as there's regulations for adult bookstores and things like that. So there are opportunities legally where we can do that. But as far as, you know, saying, hey, we've got enough mobile phone stores, we just don't get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you brought that up, because I remember a few years back, there were rumors of an adult strip club, if you would, coming to Murfreesboro, or one opening in Murfreesboro, which is really hard to picture, because at least I don't see Murfreesboro that way, and I hope that we don't in the future. But what about things like that? Because you always do hear those rumors or thoughts or ideas that people toss around, and next thing you know, it's happening. Of course, it hasn't happened yet.
You know, luckily we have zoning ordinances that are in place. So when new developments come in, for example...
Did you say nude developments or new?
Not nude.
Okay. Just making sure there.
New, N-E-W. When new developments come in, our team, after listening to the city council, the planning commission, the city council can, for example, a great example is out in the Veterans Parkway area, that when people would come in, the city would say, look, we want to see a planned development, which basically means that you're going to tell everyone what you're going to do there. So in other words, you can say as a city, hey, we like your project, but here are the things that we don't want to see here. We don't want to see a beer and tobacco store. We don't want to see a liquor store. We don't want to see a dry cleaner, so you can really specify what you want to see in that area. And then you work with the developer to say, okay, are you good? We don't want these things here.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if the developer pushes back and says, no, I don't agree to that, well, then it goes to the public process, and the planning commission can say, you want this zoning. If you want this zoning, we don't like these uses here. And so there are opportunities where you can do that. But the issue is if you have what's called a bulk zoning. So if something is just zoned commercial, we don't get the opportunity to be able to do that.
And then I guess there's also that process where, and I'm assuming this is the case, but are there public hearings whenever, the planning committee meets to discuss the idea of XYZ opening a business here? I mean, does the public have that ability to give input on that new business wanting to build wherever the location is?
Yes. I mean, with any rezoning request, we actually go a separate step. By state law, you really only have to have one public hearing, typically at the planning commission level. We go a second step where we also have a public hearing at the council level. So we want to give everyone the opportunity to have their voice on what they want to see in their community. So that's something that we've tried really hard. And Scott, we've even tried that, through, like I just say with me as mayor, we're doing TV clips to be able to try to help explain what's happening in Murfreesboro. We're doing Facebook Lives. We're doing all of these things to try to engage people to be part of the process. And that's all you can ask for.
It's really amazing when you look at how interactive you are, other city council persons are, when compared to years past. I mean, when compared to, let's say, 20, 30 years ago. It is a totally different environment, and people want to ask questions and then have the answer, within 5 minutes. I mean, we just live in, I got to have it right now type of society, but you are providing that. I mean, you are responding to folks quickly.
Yeah, that's part of our job. As mayor, again, one of my core beliefs that you have to be accessible for people to ask you questions, even if it's things that you may not agree with. Typically what I will tell people is like, look, as long as you're respectful, I will have any conversation with someone. And I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn, but you can go out there and there are not many elected officials who are holding, Facebook Lives and answering questions, or that just doesn't happen a lot. And so I'd say this to the residents of Murfreesboro: the minute that I don't feel like I enjoy interacting with people anymore, I'll just do something else. I have no desire to run for higher office.
Yeah. I
mean, you can book that. I enjoy where I am. I enjoy the moment I'm in here in Murfreesboro. I want to do it another 4 years because I think there's so many infrastructure projects, landfill we need to get situated. There are all these things that I want to be able to finish up. But I enjoy the residents here in Murfreesboro. I don't think I could ever do anything else.
It would be tough to be in an elected office. I mean, what you do day in and day out, you have to have the right personality for it. You have to have the right makeup in order to go about talking to folks out there each and every day, the ones who are mad, the ones who are happy, the ones who are concerned, the ones who want to question everything. I mean, there's just a lot that goes into politics.
I think, yes, 100%. I try to pride myself on understanding, I'm from a small town, and I always, my entire life, I'm from a pretty rural and poor county. And because I'm from that county, when you tell someone where you're from, they immediately will sort of pull their head back because that area for a time did not have a great reputation. And so I've had a chip on my shoulder the entire time about feeling lesser, and what it has taught me, and it's really from my hometown, there are good people everywhere you go. In Murfreesboro, I never get upset with someone for expressing how they feel, because at the moment that they're expressing that to you, that's the most important thing that's in their mind at that point, that pothole, that feeling of being unsafe at a certain area. So, and I think that's why and you believe this from your faith standpoint, that you feel like that God puts you in a position to be able to do what you're doing. And that's why I say that the minute that I feel like that I'm not doing my job, I'll do something else. Now, do I mess up? 100%. And I was speaking to Bill Rice Christian Academy day before yesterday, and this is really going from a sermon. I mean, man, we put so much of our happiness in what our political officials do. And if we put our faith in political officials to make us happy, we're going to be disappointed a lot of the time. And so that's why I try to impress on people that, you know, you need to get people in office that you feel like that you can talk to, that you feel like that you're going to listen to, that will listen to you. And ultimately, people that will look you and tell you, I don't agree with that. And it's not going to be someone that's going to say, for example, hey, look, I know I told you I was going to vote for that, but look, politically, that's not the best thing right now, so I'll take care of you later. And I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm going to be transparent with people. I'm going to tell them where we are, tell them, you know, why we made a decision, and then hopefully people can respect the decision that you made and at least understand what went into making that decision.
You know, I think in general, it is hard for most people to just slow down, to kind of pause, and to take in what somebody else is saying and then try to understand it from their point of view. But you've got to do that each and every day.
Man, I was in I think it's okay to say this. I was in a landfill deposition yesterday for a long time. And that really is one of those things that you're getting, you know, peppered with these questions. And part of it is that it's pausing and listening. And that's the thing I try to impress upon our council members, and hopefully we've got a good council, and hopefully it's from leading from example that you have to be thoughtful in the decisions that you're going to make. I'll give you a great example. We voted down a industrial development on Manchester Highway. It actually didn't make it past the annexation part. I voted for the annexation just because I wanted to be, the way that our annexation process works, if you vote that you could annex the property, it still has to go, the next step is the zoning, and if the zoning doesn't pass, the annexation doesn't matter. But I mean, I was against the development just because that's not what we told the residents that we were going to do out in that area. And that's the thing, I think that, you know, the developer got really upset about that. But we don't serve developers. We serve our residents. And that, you know, we get hit as political officials quite a bit about, well, you're only worried about tax revenue. You're only worried about, and I would say, being transparent, yes, we are worried about tax revenue, because every tax dollar that we can bring in from the outside, that's a dollar our resident doesn't have to pay. And so as a resident, I think you want your elected officials to be cognizant of the best and most useful way you can bring in tax revenue, that you're not having to get that from your property tax.
Again, with us this morning in studio, Murfreesboro Mayor Shane McFarland. You know, I've noticed over the years, and I'm curious if you've noticed this too from where you sit, but I've noticed people get so wrapped up into somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's passion for doing whatever that person may be doing. And the next thing you know, this person, whoever it may be, they've totally changed sides of what they lean towards or what they are against. And it happens so quickly, almost at the flip of a dime. It's almost like people don't have the ability to remain on task and to stand for something anymore. They get off key so quickly. It's like people don't stand for stuff like they once did, and they're scared to give their very own thoughts or opinions, so they have to go with somebody else's.
Scott, I tell you this, and you've heard me say this before, and I mean this to the resident who's listening to this, the minute that I start counting votes out in the audience, or the minute that you start saying, hey, I know that this is the right thing, but that's probably not the most political thing, then that gets us to where we are in Washington right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that. I mean, I have to lay my head down on my pillow every night, and Ashley will tell you, this is not like the Pump Up Shane show for the day. Man, I take this stuff serious. And like even with the deposition yesterday, I woke up at 3:00 in the morning going through questions in my head. And that's the part where I think, even if you have a different position, you have a different political background, you still have to be able to work with people. And I think that's one of the reasons Murfreesboro is, it's hard to argue when you look at other communities. It's hard to argue that Murfreesboro has not been successful. Now, do we have a lot of traffic? Yes. Are some people upset with the amount of people who've moved here? Absolutely. But it's hard to argue that you look at all the things as a whole in our city that we're not a great place to live in a successful city.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll get to this question. And the next question, I'll tell you what it is before we head to the break, but they're asking about the growth of Murfreesboro, and they're asking, is Murfreesboro still one of the fastest growing cities in Tennessee? And do city services and infrastructure currently have enough manpower to keep up with that growth? And we'll tackle that when we come back in just a second. And again, with us in studio, Murfreesboro Mayor Shane McFarland.
The Action Line on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Ascension St. Thomas Heart is the leader in Middle Tennessee for heart care, providing the most advanced options, including heart surgery and transplants. Our nationally recognized cardiac team cares for more adult hearts than anyone in the state, from AFib to heart failure, using minimally invasive options when possible to help shorten recovery, making Ascension St. Thomas Heart your first choice for routine heart care and cardiac emergencies. Schedule a heart screening or find a cardiologist at ascension.org/St. Thomas Heart.
This is Hannah Bleen here at the Rutherford County Farmers Market, and we're here to talk to different vendors today.
This is Jeremy Mack with Bantam Farm. Bantam Farm specializes in soft sourdough bread. We use an Italian flour and olive oil in all our soft sourdough products, so we don't use any American GMO. We don't use any seed oils in our sourdough products. We also have many, many other things. So come out and see us at the Rutherford County Farmers Market.
Thank you so much.
Charlie Campbell here, owner of Kettle Classic Gourmet Popcorn. You can come check us out at the Rutherford County's Farmers Market every Tuesday and Friday, where we offer up fresh kettle corn and caramel corn. You can also come and see us at the storefront at 5525 Franklin Road. We have multiple flavors of gourmet popcorn.
The Rutherford County Farmers Market is located at 315 John R. Rice Boulevard, the Lane Agri Park. We're open every Friday, 8 a.m. until noon, and Tuesday, 7 a.m. to noon, with the exception of afternoon markets running 2 to 7 p.m.
Hi, this is Bill Mills, and I'm inviting you to come to Adams Place for a visit. There's a lot of entertainment that's brought into Adams Place. We can mix socially, exercising. There's a pool, there's puzzle rooms, and all sorts of things to keep you busy, no matter what you want to do.
This is Terry Deal. Call me at 615-904-9111. Adams Place on Memorial across from Walmart.
The Action Line on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Murfreesboro Mayor Shane McFarland in studio with us this morning. And the question right before that last break, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about when you first came on the air this morning. Infrastructure, roadways, all that stuff. But the question again was, Murfreesboro is now one of the fastest growing cities in Tennessee. Is that still true today? And do city services and infrastructure currently have enough manpower to keep up with that growth?
Yes, I think Murfreesboro is still considered one of the faster growing cities. I don't know if it's the fastest growing city in Tennessee. So I would say this, city manpower, yes. the amount of resources that the city council has put into place for public safety, for solid waste, street department. I mean, you really look at the overall structure that we have in the city, and I'm not just blowing smoke. I mean, like the winter storm that we had that several months ago, you look at how well our street department performed. I mean, we have got some of the best people you will find. Infrastructure-wise, which the main thing that people really rely or think about on infrastructure is roads, is traffic. So you look at the infrastructure in place for solid waste, water, sewer, electricity, your main essential services, they're in great shape. Roads continue to be an issue. And Scott, I'm not passing the buck, but the majority of roads that we and the resident drives every single day are out of our control, and that we are doing everything we can to work with our state partners to get funding on those roads. That's the truth. And I think if you talk to our delegation, who is working just as hard as I am, to get some of that funding, they'll tell you the same thing. So, I mean, our delegation that we have, our state delegation, our senators and our representatives, all are working to get funding for Murfreesboro. But, and this is something I think that I hope in the future will be discussed, but TDOT is a pay-as-you-go state. So I think the last number that we were told is basically there are $300 billion, I believe that's right, $300 billion, or it may be $30 billion, but it's a substantial, the backlog of projects in the state compared to the current funding that they have is 10 times. And so that backlog continues to grow while the funding sort of stays pretty static. And the legislature, I know, is continuing to put more funding. I think they just recently put $400 million more into road infrastructure funding this session, but it's not enough. And so, at the same time, if the resident, will understand this as well, we're working with TDOT to get those funds. So it's really hard for us to criticize the funding body that's giving us our money. And so that's why we're putting more money in place to say, look, we realize you have a funding shortage. We'll pay for 50% of your state road to improve the quality of life of our resident in Murfreesboro.
And unfortunately, excuse me, this funding backlog, if you would, it's only going to get worse in time, because the more hybrid vehicles that are out there, the more electric vehicles that are out there, the less money that is generated at the gas pump. And that goes into the roadways. Yeah,
I mean, Buc-ee's is coming, and Buc-ee's is going to be a substantial increase for the resident of the city of Murfreesboro on getting paving money based on the fuel that will be sold there. We get a percentage of that. But it's going to continue to be something that municipalities will deal with, because you have one funding agency, Tennessee Department of Transportation. You have 95 counties that are all lobbying for funds for their area. And so there's only so much to go around. And with that funding, the political background of how hard people in elected office in Nashville are fighting for their communities is tough. But I will say this, I'll put up our delegation. I'll put up the elected officials that represent Rutherford County at the state. I'll put them up against anyone. And so I know the one thing that we can say is I have faith in the people who are representing Rutherford County, that they are working to improve the lives of the Rutherford County resident. And so that's something that we've got their back. And the minute that they call, I mean, for example, I called Representative Stevens the other day just saying, hey, I don't understand this. Can you give me, he's always good at explaining things. And so I called Robert and said, hey, I don't understand what's going on here. Can you explain this to me? And man, he absolutely explained. And so we have that relationship with every one of our delegation members. And I know that, for example, Memorial, that, when we reach out to call and say, look, this section of Memorial on West Jefferson Pike, this helps the city resident, the county resident, that they're going to be fighting their rear end off to try to help us get funding for that.
I know we don't have any time left, and we've got several other questions that there's no way we can get to. But in closing this morning, I know you mentioned the talk with the landfill folks, not necessarily a fun talk, a deposition talk, if you would. But where do we stand today, and what's going to happen next with Murfreesboro using or utilizing the landfill, and what are their plans? Or they think they may have plans?
Well, I mean, their plan right now is they want to do a vertical expansion, almost 80,
so still pushing
80
for that.
feet tall. Well, they've gotten beat. We beat them in Chancery Court, and the Chancery Court said, no, you've got to go through this process, and TDEC is that we don't have enough time to have that discussion. But by the way, with TDEC, the vertical expansion that all the paperwork calls it an expansion, it is technically not. They're arguing it's not an expansion. It's a contour change. So you can't make this stuff up. So we're going through the legal process. I mean, like, look, the city of Murfreesboro, we had a great meeting 2 weeks ago with the new industry that's wanting to come into Murfreesboro to help with solid waste. There's so many things that are out there that we're going to keep fighting to. I mean, I've not had one resident who's come up to me that says you're wasting your time fighting this. I mean, I think it's safe to say, and I'll continually say this, our drinking water is important. Our quality of life, our air quality is important. Burying stuff in the ground, is it the cheapest? Yeah, it's the cheapest, but that's not always the best thing. And so I think what the resident of Murfreesboro has said is that we need to find better ways to do this, and that's what we're going to continue to fight to do.
And again, that burying stuff in the ground just happens to be buried right next to our drinking water supply.
I mean, look, I'm not ever going to criticize decisions that were made. Well, I shouldn't say ever. That is one decision I will criticize, to say the elected officials 30 and 40 years ago who put a major landfill next to our main water source. That was a bad decision. And you know, I don't know why they did that, but I would like to think now that if a landfill came and they said, I mean, look at the state. The state has passed a thing for the Duck River saying that you can't do that. But what the state is also saying, and this is what's crazy with TDEC, that they're saying, look, we're going to protect the Duck River. But man, y'all already have Middle Point, so we're not really going to protect the Stones River. And so those are the things that we're going to push back on. And you know, as an elected official, I think that's what the residents want us to do. They want us to be able to protect the community for the upcoming foreseeable future, and that's what we're going to do.
You know, the Duck River is is documented all over the place, one of the most biodiverse rivers in North America. But I'm curious, how biodiverse is the Stones River? I mean, do we really know? Have we done full in-depth studies, and is that a route to take?
We've done studies to be able to look at oxygen in the Stones River, but I mean, you can't argue that there's a high mercury level sign at the Stones River. There's a sign that, you know, the city pointed out yesterday that put up that shows about chemicals, you know, from the landfill that are in there. So look, that's something that we're going to take very seriously, and I'm the part I am looking forward to in this lawsuit, and I can't say any more or I'll get in trouble, that I'm really looking forward that the city gets the opportunity to share information from the experts on what they've found, to be able to say, here are things that can improve.
When's that going to happen, do you think?
It'll be this year. I mean, so I think the lawsuit, I mean, the federal court, it's at the end of this year.
So the city hopefully won't stay quiet about some of the things that were uncovered during the city's study? Yeah, I mean, I think everything will continually work through the process of the legal proceedings. That's about all I can say on it. The resident can rest assured that we are not going to put the city residents in any situation that would be unsafe or unhealthy for them. Again, with us this morning, and we're way over time, but Mayor Shane McFarland.
We'll do this 2 hours the next time.
Yeah, we'll make it 6. Make it 8.
We'll tell Chip he's got to hold off. And hey, the next guest is Jeff Peach, our new city attorney. So
that's right. Has he taken his position yet?
Yeah, he started a little over a week and a half ago. So
cool.
The listener, y'all are going to enjoy hearing from Jeff and Chip.
And his father, Dick Peach, longtime Rutherford County Sheriff's deputy, who, folks love him and loved him over the years, because I know he retired years ago, but man, great guy too.
Great family. I smile every time I see Jeff. He makes me happy to see him.
Well, take care. Again, Murfreesboro Mayor Shane McFarland. Right now the time, 9:04. Stay with us. We've got more news coming your way next.